Everybody, welcome to Torn Tuesday. This is a huge week. My name's Justin. I'm joined with Cliff. As always, we've been doing this show for 8 years, which means 400 episodes. Cliff is muted, but he'll figure out the technical jiggery pokery in a second. Cliff,
hello everybody. How you doing? Okay, yes. Not like I haven't done this before. It's good to have everyone here with us on another very special edition of Torn Tuesday. We are the OneRing.net, forged by and for the fans of J.R.R. Tolkien. Welcome aboard, everybody. And we've got lots of business to attend to, don't we?
Yeah, so let's just jump into it. Before we get to the big news, the scoop that I've been talking about for weeks, we have another big news announcement. I'm joined again today by author Doug Adams, who wrote the book that we're about to give away. Doug, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I can't believe we marathoned 24 hours worth of Middle-earth movies, and you did a commentary through the whole thing.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I can't believe people are going back for like second listenings. I see people recommending it to their friends on Twitter and stuff. So that's kind of amazing.
It's amazing. And the responses to the giveaway, 83,000 viewer, 83,000 entries in that.
Yeah, that's wild. I can't believe that.
I mean, you were kind of flabbergasted by that. I saw the tweets.
Yeah, it's crazy to me. I've never seen something like that quite happen on anything I've worked on in that manner. So I hope the people that we'll give away a book here, but if the other people that didn't win want to go out and buy one, it would sure be nice.
It's available at every bookstore, right?
Should be available at every bookstore. It's on Amazon around the world. Yeah, should be easily found.
It was such a great conversation, and I'm so grateful for Jim J. Ware and for you, Mr. Doug Adams, to have joined us, because the fan community has been just constantly delighted at these erudition bombs that you just drop on us. We just love it so much, learning from you and your experiences with Howard Shore himself. Fantastic.
Well, it was a thrill to do it. The questions were great. People's enthusiasm was great. That's the sort of thing that just really fuels the fire. It's so much fun to be involved with that.
Well, let's get to it. That the announced winner of the signed copy that he's holding in his hands, you're going to get that copy right there.
This is the one, yeah.
Entry number 28,935, Mr. Jorn Conan from Germany has won.
Hey, nice.
Congratulations. All right.
So
I think that means I have to take the shrink wrap off, right?
Doug is going to take the shrink wrap off, and you're signing the book live on camera. This is the real deal. This is the actual book from the actual author. Now in its sixth printing.
Sixth printing, that's right.
Sixth printing for the music of Lord of the Rings, which begs the question, why isn't the music of the Hobbit book published yet? Why don't we have an audible version of this book with the soundtrack cues that I can listen to? I would love that.
The road goes ever on. You never know.
I think that's what we're looking at now. There's that much thirst. There's that much of an audience. I'm loving this. Wow, this is a very lucky man to get this autographed copy from you. This is very exciting.
There you go.
Now
we got my scribble.
There it is.
No longer mint in shrink wrap, but hopefully that'll be
now it's worth even more. Hey, I was thinking because we got so many entries, 83,000 entries, would you want to sign a couple more to give away?
Sure, we're going to have to pick a couple more winners, though.
All right. Well, why don't we do that now? Why don't you give me a number between 1 and 83,000?
Well, you picked my first choice as a lucky number, which was 28,000, whatever it was. So my second most lucky number is 27. So why don't we see who entry number 27 was?
All right. Let me bring that up. It is Rufus Toby in Atlanta, Georgia.
Rufus Toby in Atlanta, Georgia. All right. Well, I don't have another one to sign with me, but yeah.
DragonCon friends. Like, there we go. Rufus, Toby, and Atlanta. I think we've got some people that are going to join us later from Atlanta as well. You know what? And let's do one more. Cliff, give us your lucky number between 1 and 83,000.
Did you say 83,000 people submitted for this? All right. Wow. Okay. I'm going to take that number and I'm going to divide it by a significant number. And it is the winner of book number 3 of the music of Lord of the Rings is entrant number 9,222. There you are. You are the winner.
Hold on. I got to.
That's it. 9,000.
Way back up.
222.
And say that number again.
9,222.
9,222 is Mr. Joe Kim in Wheaton, Illinois.
Wheaton, Illinois. That's not too far from where I am. That one will be cheap.
Wheaton, Illinois.
Isn't that where Wheaton College is?
That's where
Wheaton College is. That's right.
Tolkien's desk is there at Wheaton College.
That's
How cool.
Right. They have a Tolkien exhibit. They have a C.S. Lewis. It's a great place.
Right. Cheers.
Jeez, I wonder if your signed book ends up in the Tolkien library at Wheaton College on Tolkien's desk.
That'd be something. They gave me a tour of that a couple of years ago. It's an absolutely fantastic exhibit. If people haven't seen it, go see it. It's great.
Well, this has been amazing. Thank you for doing those watch-alongs, commentaries. They're all on YouTube and Facebook. If you want to watch Lord of the We've left that up, and hopefully the powers that be one day say we need the book for the music of The Hobbit, and maybe one day an Audible version with the licensed music cues. That'd be so much fun. Doug, do you want to stick around a little bit for the conversation we're about to have?
I think my wife has requested that I rejoin her, so I've got to bounce.
All right, Doug Adams, thank you so much. Everyone, follow him on Twitter, Doug Adams Music, and you are just the best. And thank you so much for all your time and support of the fans.
Cheers, guys. I hope I see you all again very soon.
Thank you again so much, Doug. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Very good. All right, Cliff,
wow.
This is
how nice. We gave away 3 books, and we have made the audience wait this long for obviously what is going to be a big reveal. Are we having a little slowdown on your network? Because I'm getting some video interruptions. Are you getting any hiccups on your end, Justin?
We're at the mercy of technology and
yes, we are.
Zoom servers, as you know.
Okay.
But we've assembled an all-star panel here to join us today to talk through what we're about to announce. And let's see if we can bring that up on screen. I am joined by 2 of the co-founders of the OneRing.net, Calistary and Zoannon, just repping the iPod headphones like you wouldn't believe. And joining them is a new member to the community, Molly Ostertag. Recently did a bunch of artwork on Tolkien and is highlighting a bunch of artists on. You can follow her on Twitter, Hobbit Gay, I believe.
That's correct.
And I got to say, congrats! You were on the Forbes 30 under 30 list a couple weeks ago.
Oh, thank you. I technically have a career outside of being a Tolkien fan, but I will be serious. When they sent me, they were like, fill out this survey to say why you should be on this list, and I was like, I write very good fan fiction. That's all I can say about myself. So I think that's probably why I got it.
That's awesome. And then we've got an all-star crew and cast and just wonderful team from the OneRing.net that's been with us so very long. We just got joined by Anne Maiden. We also have Josh, who's Saruman in the chat room. We've got Deej, Rebecca Perry, coming out of Atlanta, I believe, right?
I am. Hi, everybody.
And we've got Kathy and Nicole, who, Nicole, you are internet famous. You are the meme of Sauron, the job that you want, right?
dress for the job you want.
if you look up "dress for the job you want" meme with the Sauron helm, There, that's Nicole. So everybody in here has a claim to fame except me.
Okay, you're funny. You're funny tonight,
Pat's,
Justin. I'll give you that.
Pat's on the phone too. Pat's here too.
Hi, Pat.
Guys,
Pat Noah.
Hi, Pat.
Awesome.
hi. I'm trying to get my camera to work, so I'll just
All right.
talk in the meantime.
Well, this is the big news, Cliff. A few weeks ago, we got a spy report of some text.
We did.
And if anyone out there has spy reports, you can always email spymaster@theonering.net, or you can slide into our DMs and just drop anonymous stuff off. And Cliff, I believe you got some text a few weeks ago, and you were like, I think this is legit.
It was legit, but it was something that got out underneath the fence. You know, it was one of those little pieces of information. Maybe the analogy is, one of the smaller chickens that got underneath the fence and it got out, and it should not have gotten out. So we were in the unusual position of, well, are we going to reveal this? Are we going to tell the whole world what we just found out? And instead, we decided to do something else instead. I guess we were able to have contact through various messengers, birds and beasts and friends of the woodland, and we were able to get a message all the way over to Aotearoa, the land of the long white cloud. And as you know, down there in New Zealand, they are filming and have been pretty busy. They've been very, very busy filming the pilot 2 episodes for this new billion-dollar Amazon series set in the second age of Middle Earth. And what we found out got back to
the question was, what are they filming?
What are they filming? And we got down to brass tacks, and they said, let's figure this out. And so we figured out what to do. We figured out we'll tell the fans something, and we got some help from the people who were
what we got seemed too official. Like usually we can gauge like what's fake and what.
Yes, indeed.
Once again.
Indeed. Usually,
poor Justin.
This seems so real.
This was so real, and I knew it was the real deal. And it all of a sudden became a point of play, and we had our very first internal conversations between theonering.net and.
But wait, we actually we had a conversation internally about in the era of fake news, we got to validate some of this stuff.
We had to. We had to.
This was too. It was too kind of crucial to wait. Should we post this if it's really not real? Because it's so we've worked through the network, and Zoanne and Michael Calasuri, you're the co-founders of theonering.net. You posted a lot of the news stories. You've been down this road before, and there's always a way to kind of validate some stuff, isn't there?
Indeed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mike. No, you got it. Go.
So we had official channels. We had backroom channels. I mean, we couldn't reach out to the filmmakers themselves per se, but we definitely had contacts at New Line to speak to and say, hey, look, we've heard this news. We've received this bit of information. Is this accurate or not? And they were always very quick to get back to us if something was inaccurate. But they were always sort of delayed when it probably was, and they were probably murmuring to themselves as to how to deal with it. So that was our barometer to know if we had got something that we shouldn't have gotten. So yeah, I'm assuming it sort of flowed the same way this time. I'm not part of that anymore, but interesting to hear.
The only difference, Mike, is back then we were immature little snots.
Yeah.
And we would just run with it anyway.
And better to ask for forgiveness
on that one. So.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to include myself in that for sure. But yeah, back then, like you said, we would wait oh, this is clearly official because they're just taking too long. and the timing. But yeah, now finish your story though, Justin. Don't cut out this time. What the heck? We're all waiting here.
Look, there's no story to tell except let's just get to it. Cliff, you have not seen this full text. No one on this call has seen this full text. This, my friends, is the official synopsis of the billion-dollar Lord of the Rings series being produced by Amazon Prime. This is legit. We've verified its authenticity and we've validated its accuracy. This is real deal. Let's bring it up on screen right now.
I have never seen this before. Shall I read this? Here we go. The OneRing.net exclusive, The Lord of the Rings official synopsis. Amazon Studios' forthcoming series brings to screens for the very first time the heroic legends of the fabled Second Age of Middle-earth's history. This epic drama is set thousands of years before the events of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, and will take viewers back to an era in which great powers were forged, kingdoms rose to glory and fell to ruin, unlikely heroes were tested, hope hung by the finest of threads, and the greatest villain that ever flowed from Tolkien's pen threatened to cover all the world in darkness. Beginning in a time of relative peace, the series follows an ensemble cast of characters, both familiar and new, as they confront the long-feared reemergence of evil to Middle-earth, from the darkest depths of the Misty Mountains to the majestic forests of the elf capital of Lindon, to the to the breathtaking island kingdom of Numenor, to the furthest reaches of the map. These kingdoms and characters will carve out legacies that live on long after they are gone. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Wow. Do you know what? We're not getting a road movie. We are getting like a much bigger splash of people and places and things. If they're actually telling us in this synopsis that we're going to the furthest reaches of the map, that means we're going to get to see things and places that we've never, ever seen before. And it's not like they're telling us this is going to be The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings, where specific people have to journey. There's not even a quest structure being hinted at. What they're hinting at is like a broader, bigger canvas of people and places. I wonder how big this is going to be. Wow, I wonder how much they're going to go for it. Wow, well, we're going to get Numenor. We're going to get the appearance of Sauron. We're going to get so much. This looks pretty promising. Let's pretty interesting.
Let's go around our panel and get first reactions and what stood out. So first reaction and what stands out from what you just saw. Let's start with the old guys. Kalasuri.
Yes, the old guys representing. Absolutely nails it for me in the sense that I love the scope. It paints with a very, very diverse brush of what we could see. And based on the really cool casting, like I'm a huge fan of the casting as of what we've seen so far. I got chills. I'm a little excited. I'm 6 months ago, I wasn't so excited for this show. Now I'm having an issue because I have enough to do in my life and I don't want to be doing news on this constantly. So I don't know what to do now. But yeah, I love it. I love it. I love that we got this confirmed, so that we know this is the real synopsis and it's the first, text officially outlining everything. So yeah, bravo guys. Nice job. This is
Molly, let's go to Molly next. What's your first reaction?
Gosh, I love like the book so much. And so I'm just really curious who the characters are going to be. Like, I thought that the cast was so cool. It made me really happy to see that they were bringing in people of color to Middle Earth. And I'm really excited to see those different cultures explored and sort of get to see all of these, like, that's always what's so fun about these stories, isn't it? Like the different cultures and the different places. But I'm just so curious, like, who are the main characters? What are they trying to do? Like, that's kind of what I need before I can get like fully invested in a story. So I'm not familiar enough with like pre Lord of the Rings, like pre Third Age stuff. So I'm not quite sure like who will end up being the main characters of this, but I'm intrigued.
It's interesting that they call out the greatest evil out of Tolkien's pen. I guess that confirms one major character, right?
Does it?
Does it?
Maybe.
Is that Melkor?
Is it this guy?
It's debatable whether Morgoth / Melkor was a greater evil than Sauron, his lieutenant. But you know what I find really interesting is that this synopsis has a lot of emphasis on locations, including some very specific locations mentioned. Well, there's no specific characters mentioned at all.
That's right.
Yeah, I was interested to see that they name drop Lindon in there, and so I did some side research here real quick to bone up on my second age because I'm also not 100% an expert, but just reading about Lindon and what's really interesting is how they say it's the show is going to start in an era of peace. Well, not to spoil it for anybody, but the fall of Lindon at the end, it's the downfall of Numenor. Lindon suffered a great loss as the sea rode up upon the land, because this is a seaside kingdom. So I'm thinking already to the epic ends of the series where we could see massive seas rushing up upon the land and destroying entire kingdoms. I think that's pretty interesting.
Let's go to Nicole.
Yeah, I was thinking the same kind of thing when I saw that Lindon was the very first place that they mentioned. It was interesting that they chose to highlight something that most people would of the actual names that they chose to put in there. They picked something that the vast majority of people, even great fans, would not be immediately familiar with, and it brings up a lot of really interesting possibilities. That they would start from that western edge and work their way towards the east. I like too that they mentioned that there's going to be both old and new faces, because like Molly, I've really been watching the diversity of the casting that they've announced so far, and I'm really interested to see how they use this opportunity to bring some new faces to the Middle Earth that people make so many assumptions about.
That's what I'm most excited about. Let's go to our Dragon Con regulars. Let's start with Rebecca Deej. How excited are you now?
I'm a little bit more excited than I was. I got to admit, like others have said, or like Chris said, I was been a little on the fence about this. I'm not gonna lie. But this synopsis has gotten me more excited now, especially hearing, like Nicole and Cliff had said, we're going to see a new land that most Tolkien fans, a new area that most people aren't going to be familiar with. And then I'm sure we also will see a lot of things that aren't going to be familiar. But I'm also really excited. Is it going to be Sauron? Is it going to be Melkor? Is it going to be like a prequel, like how we see, Anakin didn't start off Darth Vader, he kind of turned into it? Are we going to see, that progression where he, turns into Sauron? What leads him on that path? I mean, that could be really interesting.
Jim Wirt, you just joined us straight out of Atlanta. We just posted it on the OneRing.net. If you go to our front page, you can read the text yourself and get chills. Keep on and reading it. Jim, did you have a chance to read it?
I did. So yeah, my reaction, I am a bit more excited. when we were going through all of the cast announcements, the great default seemed to be, well, this must be somebody from Numenor. And what this announcement does is I think it really expands the scope, because they're talking about the reactions from all over Middle Earth. And Lyndon, for me, says, wow, I guess we really are going to see Círdan the Shipwright and see some of that history behind that element. But I think it opens up dwarven kingdoms and elvish kingdoms and kingdoms of men, and Numenor is clearly on the map. So the breadth of this thing versus just being, well, let's tell you the story of Numenor, is pretty intriguing to me. For me, it's very clear that this rising evil is Sauron, but I think we're going to see him in that seductive mode that allows us to get a more nuanced versus this great big guy with a mace or a glowing eye. We're going to see a lot more in-depth character and see why he was able to seduce men and elves across the ring forging and so on. I think we're going to get to see the ring forging at some point. Not sure it's in the first two episodes of the first season, obviously, but I think it just opens up the universe, and that will allow for interesting casting decisions and greater breadth. So I'm pretty psyched.
To that last point, the chat room is in agreement with you. RJ McReady over in the YouTube chat says, this shows the scope is much larger than we all even thought, as it should be. They have to go huge, and it appears they are. You have to go huge to cover the second age well. That's from the chat room. Let's go to longtime staffer Pat Dawson. Does this answer any of the questions that you had lingering?
Quite a few, but of course, then again, it prompts 1,000 more. But I was just reading, just came up on the homepage, and I was just reading the synopsis over and over again, as I'm sure we all will be for the next week or so. But if it's going to concentrate on the second age, then I think that greatest villain must be Sauron, because Melkor was kind of out of the picture after the first age. So I think it's going to be Sauron. And I mean, when the great forging great powers, in my ears heard the forging of the rings of power. So I'm really excited about that, because I think, number one, I think we will possibly see Sauron evolve from at least pretending to be nice to turning into the evil Sauron. And I think it's also, because they mentioned Numenor, I'm really hoping that they get into some of those stories from unfinished tales like Aldarion and Erendis, and we see the whole interaction of Numenor and how they discover Middle Earth again, and all the adventures that goes along with all of that. And I'm really excited about it.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, because at the end of the first age, when we switched over to the second age, that was the moment when the Valar had pushed Morgoth as a prisoner out into the void. And at that point, wouldn't it be interesting if they do some kind of flashback to show somewhat the relationship between Sauron watching his big boss get imprisoned and kicked out into the void, and then Sauron all of a sudden is wandering around in the second age and he assumes the mantle? That could be really interesting.
That's a great comment. Yep.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Let's hear from the two Joshes on the chat. Josh Rubenstein, Saruman, you used to run Torn Book Club. So the question is, it sounds like it's official. They have more book license than we ever thought.
Yeah, it was kind of fascinating to read that. And like, I didn't really have high or low expectations of this show going into it. Like, I mean, I watched the casting announcements and I was like, okay, I'm curious to see who this person is going to be playing. But I didn't really like have any expectations. But now reading this, I'm kind of like, okay, they are really going hard into the second age. And it's like, it's a much larger scope than I was expecting. And I think, the villain is most likely going to be Sauron. What to Cliff's point about like maybe a flashback or something like that, I think it would be really cool, like if it starts off with like a prologue like Fellowship did, where we actually see some of the War of Wrath, and the expulsion of Morgoth. I think like that would be really cool to see. And what I'm kind of hoping is that like we don't go immediately into the creation of the Rings of Power, but that kind of becomes like the climax, so to speak. What I kind of would love to see with this is like somebody had mentioned like maybe an Anakin type of story. One of the things that always stuck out to me in the Silmarillion was how Sauron had actually turned himself in, like at the end of the War of Wrath, he'd actually turned himself over to the elves and basically said, "Listen, I'm ready to face judgment." And then suddenly turned around on that when he realized, oh, they were going to take him to Valinor, and actually he might suffer the same fate as Morgoth, and he took off and ran. And so I think it would be really cool, like if we see like him sort of evolving as this kind of cowardly character who then grows into this deeper, more resentful, more power hungry, evil person.
Yeah, totally. Hey, the OneRing.net has crashed for the first time in 2 decades.
Yep. I was trying to load it up too. The website has definitely crashed.
Oh wow.
Speaking of crashing, let's go to our collectibles editor, Josh Long. Is your pocketbook ready for all the new merch on what we're about to see?
On a teacher salary, it's barely ready for the stuff now. So I'm, I started out excited about the show because of how much I love the material and how much obviously getting to interact with you guys just increases that. And then we got to talking and I kind of moved to the fence. This synopsis has me back excited. Cliff reading it gives me goosebumps. Cliff, by the way, you need to live forever so you can read my obituary. So it sounds like I accomplished important things in life.
Thank you, my friend.
I think it sounds really, I think to do Lord of the Rings, to do Middle Earth, to do The Hobbit, to just do all of that properly, there needs to be a sense of impressive scale. And it sounds like, at least with Cliff reading it, it sounds like Amazon is going to do that. And it's not going to be just kind of fly by night. Now, obviously, we haven't seen, any scenes, any of that kind of stuff, but just imagining in your head, it sounds like there's scale to it to do justice to something that means so much to all of us. So I think that that's very important. It makes me feel good. It gives me goosebumps thinking about it. And to round about to your original question, yeah, I mean, if the show is awesome, if I walk away from it feeling, just a sense of emotion, that I get when I think about Lord of the Rings, when I listen to the soundtracks and stuff, yeah, I'm ready to purchase some collectibles and to talk about those and how important those are to me and why I think it's worth people buying those. So yeah, I'm ready to see more, hear more, experience more, and let's see where this goes, because I feel good at the moment.
That's great. Let's go to Anne. I don't think we've heard from you yet. Ent Maiden, is there anything specific that what just caught your eye?
Well, one of the things I was reflecting on when we talked about the breadth of the story is how they introduced the fact that we were going to the Second Age. Remember all those maps that they kept focusing on, which I thought was brilliant. But you really got a chance to see, the parts of Middle Earth, and then, they slowly kind of chopped away, and then we saw Numenor. So to me, this is the same kind of thing, is it's really telling us the span of the story, that they're also, what I'm excited about is how many stories, just like Pat talked about, how many stories, plus, let me stop for 1 second. It's so good to see you all because it's been way too long, but, just the scope and vastness of the story, and how many, because there's so little real information about the Second Age, how much they can really mine some of the breadcrumbs that Tolkien left. And the last thing I want to say is I am so excited to see Anatar, and see how they develop that, because we may not hear the word Sauron for quite some time.
You're right.
And I'm really, really excited about that.
I'm excited for another prequel trilogy about little Annie.
Hold your
Kathy's
tongue.
Kathy's shaking her head.
Now I'm waiting for Sauron to start talking about how much he hates sand, how it gets into everything.
Lord.
It gets in his armor.
The one item on this announcement that was also pretty intriguing, it says, and I'm sorry I missed Cliff reading it, that it's going to follow an ensemble cast of characters, both familiar and new. This is the real challenge of doing something epic and thousands of years long, is which characters do we focus on and how are they going to do it? And are they going to have the flashbacks and do a little Melkor inspiration for Anatar, who becomes Sauron? Or are we going to have men who don't live for thousands of years? So do we get to see a little Elros story or a little Arendis story versus the Galadriel long arc and the Anatar Sauron long arc? But the fact that they're focusing on characters, because that is what is so meaningful for us. If you think about how we engaged as readers or how we engaged in the movies, it's character driven. I mean, there's plot, but we want to see how the hobbits interact with one another. We want to see how Gimli and Legolas become friends with one another. We want to see Aragorn rise to become the king. And so those kinds of character elements, I think, are hinted at here. That's going to be the make or break. Are they going to give us characters that we know and or that we grow to love in an environment where we don't know anything about Second Age stories, really? So they get to tell us those stories.
It definitely feels like they're focused on the locations, and let's get Kathy in here because she's our resident travel expert and has probably been to Middle Earth more than all of us combined. The locations get you excited here, Kathy?
Well, okay, so I'm going to look at the text as I say this because I love the way they worded this. Kingdoms rose to glory and fell to ruin. As you know, I can't wait to see Numenor destroyed. But what I love, and it makes more of an impact, is to see Numenor in its glory. Because when we hear about Arnor and Gondor and the history of the Numenorians, it's about their glory. So to finally actually get to see Numenor in its glory was really cool. And then when they mentioned the elf capital of Lindon, because they talk about kingdoms, plural. So to see the capital of Lindon also in its glory, so an elven kingdom in its glory. So I'm really excited to see that because it also mentions, again, it actually gives us a starting point. It begins in a time of relative peace. So we're going to have the peace, although this is stated right after it mentions, one of the evilest characters that Tolkien ever wrote about. So I just sort of love the way that it mentions the glory and then the fall of kingdoms. And we know that with Numenor, it was Anatar's influence on them that caused the fall, whereas it sounds like with Lindon, it was just a victim of the rising ocean that happened when an entire island is sunken. And as to what, go ahead.
Oh, I just want to follow up on that, thinking about the places that we're wanting to see and taking us on a trip on the Wayback Machine, since this is going to be the 20th anniversary of the release of Fellowship of the Ring. Back to 20 years ago when we had there was that event on live commercial television with the sneak preview of a scene from Fellowship where we got to see Khazad-dûm for the very first time.
Oh yes, the cave troll.
One of the very first locations that we got to see that had been created for the new films. And looking at the synopsis, that the very first place that they mention is the darkest depths of the Misty Mountains, and then sandwiching that between Lindon and Numenor, that we're gonna be seeing Moria in its prime. That we're
that's a third kingdom.
Yeah.
The elves and the men traversing through the Speak Friend and Enter gates at the time when we were a friend, and that we might be seeing the Balrog come to Moria.
Or Holland too. We might see
Oh
Holland.
my God, I was just gonna say Holland.
And that will
Yes, exactly.
So
Please,
I got
yes.
really excited about that, as far as like bringing me all the way back to the beginning of my Lord of the Rings journey 20 years ago, and seeing those first shots of Moria after its destruction, to now have this new show reintroduced with Moria in its glory is going to be amazing.
Well, and further on with the map thing and the idea of locations is the fact that they do mention the full breadth of the map. And of course, when that was first released, our very first panels at various conventions was all about all the places they could go. I mean, I'm very Dr. Seuss there of all the things you'll see and all the places you'll go. But I know we were very aspirational. We finally get to see the expanse of peoples, which leaves room for such diversity that they've cast.
It's also, yeah, indeed, I'm glad you said that. Also notable in the live chat, at least one or two people have said this story synopsis almost guarantees that we're going to see the two blue wizards, who are the other two individual characters out of the 5 Istari that we would love to learn more about. And Professor Tolkien doesn't give us too much detail about them, except for trying to rewrite their history later on in his life. He reconsidered those characters and reapproached them. But imagine this synopsis saying the furthest reaches. About 20 years ago, maybe 19 years ago, one of the earliest articles that I wrote for our online magazine was called The Furthest Reaches. And I was just extrapolating in my imagination what it would be like to go to different places on the map that Professor Tolkien never really took us to go and see. And I tell you what, that idea of exploration, of going to different regions and seeing all these new mountains and new rivers and new forests, I think there's a very strong Tookish quality in me waking up at the idea of going to see all these new kingdoms, because when the two blue wizards arrived, Tolkien considered in his later writings that they came to Middle-earth during the Second Age and went wandering far off the edges of the map to the east, and were working hard to subvert the smoldering dissension that Morgoth had left there among the peoples of the East, for lack of a better term. So we're going to get a chance. I agree. I definitely agree with the way this is written. It's very enticing, and it does allow your imagination to do what it does best, to go to these brand new places. And it would be more than delightful to say, yes, they really got licensing from Unfinished Tales and from other stuff in the History of Middle-earth series. Maybe they are going to tell us more about the Blue Wizards and the kind of efforts that they made all those centuries ago. I'm really excited about that. Really.
I got one more thing to toss in here real quick. Hey, Dole, Mary Dole. What about Tom Bombadil? Is he going to be like a Deus Ex Machina? And is he going to be the cat? Like, is he going to come in at random times through this whole series and be the folklore hero for all of the races? Like,
there's just gonna be a little feather here and there, and so it's like an Easter egg. We're just gonna
now that would be funny.
Rod Sterling, and
we can only hope.
Periodically.
There are more than just the kingdoms of the free folk that we need to think about on this thing. So yeah, we're going to see elven kingdoms and human kingdoms and maybe a dwarvish kingdom in Moria. There are evil kingdoms at work. So specific to Bombadil and where he takes up residence, we've got the whole rise of Angmar. Well, the origin story of the Barrow Downs that could happen with this thing.
The question I wanted to ask, and maybe I can start with Molly on this one, is that Lord of the Rings and Hobbit had a great entry point for everyone. Hobbits are the everyman. They want the simple things in life. So as we just discussed, they mention the Dwarven lands under the Misty Mountains, the Elvish kingdoms, and the kingdoms of men. So do you see a good entry point for new fans to enter Middle Earth with the show?
Honestly, I'm like not so much. I'm really curious, like because I love how excited you guys are about like the expansion of this huge fantasy world. To me, I really love Lord of the Rings because of sort of the core elements of like, I love that the characters are like these very small people who are out of place and like don't quite understand what's going on, but are caught up in things bigger than them. Like that to me is kind of the core of Lord of the Rings. And so I'm really curious if they'll carry over like that kind of theme, and if we will be able to, like, I feel like probably like a dwarfish character would be the best. There was like a really funny tweet the other day that was just like, Tolkien went off when he invented a little guy that runs around. And I'm like, where's the little guy that runs around in this series? Because I think we need like one little guy to follow and just be like, what is their experience of these like very big and complex stories?
I can pretty much,
I'll need to know. Yeah.
Yeah. I can pretty much guarantee that the writer's room initially, way before they started building any sets and went down to New Zealand, had these talks, right? And they said, okay, this is a big, massive, huge, larger than life characters, quite literally. How are we going to relate this to the viewer, to the existing viewer? We have an in already, but how are we going to grab new viewers to get this, right? Because bottom line, that's what Amazon wants, right? Newer viewers, new subscriptions, right? So
I think that's
those talks are have happened, I'm sure, and there's some type of niche that they've put in there, and we'll be able to see who our Sam is, who our Frodo is, in the Second Age, and who these characters are.
But it almost has to be an elf or Saruman, because we're dealing with a time period that's longer than one lifetime.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what's so interesting is that elves are such like removed characters, like they live so long. So it's like, if elves are your main characters, if it's happening on the scale of an elf lifespan, how do you make that really relatable? Which is like super interesing. I'm really interested to see what they do. But I also hope that there's just
talk really slow, like the elves.
Maybe it could be the two blue wizards, because they are the ones who are supposed to be wandering through the lands to try to suss out the evil and try to undo it.
Well, but
I'm rooting for them being like a lesbian couple. That's what I want from the blue wizards. I'm just like, I just think we got to do it.
If it's not going to be the
Jim, what were you saying?
If it's not going to be the elves providing, because I think there'll be multiple angles on this, and elves like Galadriel are living since before the First Age all the way into when she leaves Lindon and the Grey Havens. So I think there will be those kinds of stories. Apart from that, then it's going to have to rely on generational stories and creating a thread that will allow us to see that. That could even apply to hobbits, by the way. Hobbits don't move to the Shire until the beginning of the Third Age, but we know that they had an origin around the Anduin. So we see some of that, even back in the movies and the Finding of the Ring in the Third Age. So it's possible that we will see those kinds of connective threads. It's most obvious in Numenor, where you have a whole line of kings, but lines of dwarves and Durin's folks, or lines of hobbits from, when they're living on the Anduin to thinking about maybe it's time to move. So I think there is an opportunity to create those little characters. And I think it's embedded in that announcement. We're going to show you characters you don't know, and you're going to have a chance to see their stories. And that's what I say. And that's going to make or break it. We have to fall in love with these characters. And one of the reasons we love them is because they're noble ones, but they're also people kind of like us, kind of like the hobbits were.
Yeah. The next question then that this official story synopsis is, which you can check on the onering.net if you can get through, because our servers are getting fried right now, is does anyone here think that the synopsis that we just got strengthens the concept that this is an extension of the Peter Jackson cinematic universe? Is this playing in the same world that we're familiar with on screen?
I don't know. My first instinct is that this synopsis is indicating a departure from the familiar.
Yeah, that's my thought too.
I actually thought the opposite. I had always mentally implied that this would be an extension of, a continuation of, with no actual physical human real life connections as far as we know. But I always thought that was going to be intended. It's interesting that you think the opposite.
Yeah, I'm with Michael. I think it's going to be an extension. They're going to be playing in the same sandbox, so to speak. I think it's kind of dangerous if they don't, because I think people are going to go into the show expecting it to be in the same sandbox as the Lord of the Rings films from Peter Jackson. I mean, if they just do something totally different, I think that puts it on a slightly different, risky path. Just because people are going to come into the show feeling something from the movies and stuff, and I don't know. I would be really shocked if it wasn't. And I'm like Michael. After hearing the synopsis, I don't see where it can't be more tied to the movies. I mean, if they go off, then they go off, but I would be pretty shocked.
But I'm not sure how it would even be connected to the movies unless you got Kate Blanchett to come back and play Galadriel or something. Like, I guess that visually they could tie connections
visually,
between the art and design. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where they're going to see probably some similarities, because obviously they're filming in the same place. And many of us have been to New Zealand, even if we, don't live there. But, I think the background will be what the tie-in point is. I think I agree with you, Molly, that I think there's going to be some characters that we know the names.
Right.
Yeah. I really hope we get a Galadriel.
A Galadriel
to see that.
I don't think obviously actors and actresses are not what I'm pretty sure I'm not going to speak for Michael, but I'll say I kind of think the same wavelength. I don't think that's what he means. And that's not what I'm saying. Obviously, because the actors from the films they're 20 years older. So 10 years older from when they were in the Hobbit films.
Although Kate Blanchett still looks good.
She still looks amazing. I don't think she
is a legitimate elf.
I think I'm picking up her age and she's just staying the same, but that's beside the point. But no, I think character names, I think settings, I think certain things like that, story elements are going to be tied to the same sandbox. Like I said, obviously because humans age, that they have to use different, and if they put Saruman in there, obviously, Christopher Lee is no longer with us, so they have to do something different. So actors, actresses know names, settings, stuff like that. Yes, and because I think if they don't, I think they go down a dangerous path of people are going to go, how does this tie to the films? And then if they can't tie to the films, they're going to lose people, because
here's how they can tie to the films.
That came into not if you read the books and you come from that starting point, yes. But if you've only ever seen the films, and that's your jumping in point, and that's all you've ever wanted to do, you don't want to go any deeper than the films. I do think if you go, you take a left at the fork in the road and go down a path where it's just its own thing and it doesn't ever have any, it's in its own sandbox. I think you will lose some folks. How many? I don't know.
We can confirm that the other piece of information that is locked, confirmed, official. Galadriel is a main character in the show. She's being played by Morfydd Clark, who's an amazing actress. And if you put a picture of Morfydd Clark as she is right now in her 20s versus Kate Blanchett when she was originally playing Galadriel 20 years ago, they look like sisters. So the actress that plays Galadriel, young Galadriel, if that exists, looks exactly like Kate Blanchett did in 1999. So there is an attempt at least to...
Well, and here's what I can see for our crossover, if we need like a really actual physical sort of crossover. Numenor falls, and as it falls, you have several ships sail from Numenor, and that's what sets up the kingdoms of Arnor and Gondor, which includes Elendil and Isildur. You then get to the last alliance of men and elves in that battle, and possibly the lead up to that battle, which is how Lord of the Rings started. The movies started with the flashback and Galadriel mentioning the last alliance. And that's your crossover. That's your crossover right there.
Well,
Yeah,
so-
that's your final season buildup, right? Is like
Yeah.
them building the alliance, and then they're off to war. We don't see the war, but we see it in flashbacks. Depends on the budget, depends on how popular it is and how long it goes. But that would be pretty epic. That kind of gives me chills actually just thinking about it.
Deej, what were you going to say?
Oh, I just wanted to tie in quickly to what Michael and Josh were talking about as far as the tone of, how is it going to tie in with the movies? I mean, not to go back to Star Wars again, but, all of those movies and the TV shows, they're all different writers and directors and filmed, different places, but they all are set in that same universe. And so they all are very visually still connected. Like, the ships and the buildings still have that familiarity to it. Like when you see something like that, you're in that universe. And so I think, the showrunners for this are really going to try hard to make sure that we also know, even if, you don't necessarily see the characters from Lord of the Rings, you're still in Middle Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that
I think,
the costume
gonna
designer
say-
worked on the Hobbit movies. She was part of the costume crew for the Hobbit.
cool.
I think we're really going to see it in the visuals that they're going to, and so much of that was not, Weta did amazing things creating the look and aesthetic of Middle Earth, but they had so much to draw from, to create that. And I think that, with all the money that Amazon paid for this material, dwarf runes are going to look like dwarf runes. And we're going to feel that look of the Gothic look and the Art Nouveau style and things like that.
Right.
Yeah,
And like
any
New Zealand. So, we're going to know we're there.
Oh, exactly. And I think, the characters we know, some of them are still going to be there, and the place we know. And like Nicole, you were saying, some of the elvish, the feel of the elves and the dwarves. But what I liked about the Lord of the Rings and what I'm looking forward to in this series is in the Lord of the Rings movies, we did see flashbacks. We saw flashbacks to the making of the Rings of Power. And we saw flashbacks to the Last Alliance, and you got this feeling of grandness that existed in the Second Age. And to me, I really don't want it to be like the other movies. I think it can be true enough to Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, but yet explore that whole different feel and the grandeur and the excitement and just the grandness of when the elves were the most powerful beings in Middle Earth. And I don't know, I am looking forward to seeing how they can differ from the Peter Jackson movies, which I still love, but I'm excited about getting something different too.
That's an excellent point. I love following up on your excellent points, but you go ahead, Josh. You first.
Well, I'm sorry. I was just I was going to speak to Deej's point about like the Star Wars comparison is also like the Star Wars prequels. They were in the same universe, but they had a very different look. Like you saw in the Star Wars prequels, a galaxy that was in its heyday, whereas in the original trilogy, you sort of saw a galaxy in the middle of a war. And so there are different visual aesthetics you can go with, but still be in that universe. And I think that's sort of like what I was trying to say with like how this is probably not going to be as visually tied to Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, because this is a very different time period. And like there is very little, there won't be as much connective tissue, I think, as we're kind of hoping for. Like we're going to have like the rings and Sauron and Galadriel, but I mean, that's kind of, I feel like that's probably where it's going to end as far as like connections to Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. But I'm looking forward to seeing like what they do with that. Like it would be really cool to see this world in its heyday in the Second Age, which is very different from what we see in the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Well, because that's exactly what I was about to say, because you're right, because now we're all thinking on the same wavelength, which I love. We're sharing a brain wave, because you look at the Fellowship of the Ring, and when Elijah Wood and Sean Bean have that dialogue in the woods, there's this collapsed statue head, and you look around and Weathertop is old and rotten and falling apart, and Minas Tirith is crumbling and old, and there's an old statue in the Return of the King. Everything that you're going to see in the Second Age is going to be all of those things, bright and brand new and shiny, and some of them are going to be created for the first time. I mean, we're going to be at a period of time where they're going to cover 3,441 years. And that's a huge basket of time. And over that 3,400 years, you're going to even see potentially the very beginnings of Rivendell and how it was created and built by Elrond. I mean, I don't know if we're going to get into the story where Rivendell even exists. Maybe we'll see it being built later on in season 3 or season 4. It's a long, long canvas. So it's a lot of interesting things that they've tantalized us with here in this.
I love the idea of seeing Dwarodelf and seeing Moria built.
And those are the locations. Those are the areas that we're going to potentially get to see that are touch points. They really are. We get to see the building of the Grey Havens, which we've seen before. We get to see the building of Moria, which we've seen before. We get to maybe see the building of Orthanc, which we've seen before. And so there are iconic locations that have their origins in the Second Age, that will be injections of memory and injections of enthusiasm. You know, if you want to use a Star Wars reference, think about how electric it was, not to do any spoilers, to see that last episode and the post-credit spoilers about what's coming up next, because the Star Wars community is thinking, wow, they pulled him back. How did he make him look so young? And we get to hear the Boba Fett story now. You mean he didn't die with the Sarlacc? Well, of course. And so those kinds of touch points, it's a brand new story, but it's electrifying to the existing fan base. And you got to do both. You got to build.
That's right. Yeah.
Personally, I'm looking forward to the opportunity to the political discourse on climate change and sea level rise that will be brought by
when your gods destroy an island, it's a little different than melting icebergs.
Yeah, but that's a way down the line, and it's kind of instantaneous.
Aaron, I was gonna add in just this. I can sort of see the connecting tissue of how they're gonna make this series, you know, for that audience, for that Lord of the Rings Peter Jackson audience, is you are introduced to a charismatic young character that finds themselves in Middle Earth, and throughout the series, you believe that character is good. You believe that character is a positive, you know, you cheering for this character. And again, those of us who know the lore are gonna be like, oh no, this guy's not good. But Anatar, as he goes through this whole first season, is my expectation. And the finale will be whatever, or maybe in that first season or second season, or whatever, the turn that will then really cement the audience for more seasons of like, oh my God, the guy just turned bad. It's very similar. We joked about it, Justin, but it's very similar to the idea of Anakin, which in its, you know, some of us aren't fans of the prequels, but the arc, right? The story, knowing that this cute little kid is going to become the ultimate evil. I can see them using that same concept to really put this innocent person into Middle Earth that then goes through all the various areas and peoples, and then has that turn. You just don't listen to us because we're going to spoil everything for you. But,
I'm like, I was thinking about that because like the creation of the Rings of Power doesn't exactly happen the way that we're kind of led to believe, or we think happen from what's told to us in the Lord of the Rings. And so there could potentially be surprises if they decide to go down that road with Anatar and the creation of the rings, which I think would be like a really cool way to take him and to sort of show his turn, especially like because they don't even know that he is Sauron until the rings are made.
Right. That's what I think is going to be so interesting, Josh. You're absolutely right. Is Anatar has always fascinated me, and I would love to see them try and bring that to life. And I think that's a great story. But you know, I've also been kind of thinking about what Molly said about how so many people were introduced to Middle Earth through the movies. And they want that connection. And I just want to tell a funny story that probably many of us relate to, is I read The Hobbit first.
Mhm.
And so Bilbo was my guy. So when they started the fellowship with this guy Frodo, I didn't like Frodo. I wanted Bilbo. And now, of course, obviously, you have this evolution of it. And I think some of the folks that maybe saw, met this world through the movies, they're going to kind of have that same transformation. Initially, they're going to want to say, I want to see hobbits, I want to see dwarves, I want to see the Shire. And I'm hoping they can take that and build on it and build it out a little bit, just like I grew to like Frodo, even though Bilbo's still my favorite. Same thing, same kind of evolution that many of us went through.
Well,
and
going with this, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Molly.
The last thing I'll say is, because I love the Second Age for itself, I will pour over the appendices and pour over Unfinished Tales. So that's why I'm excited. So that's it.
Well,
Go ahead,
that leads into our final question tonight. I want to get a pulse from each of you, and I'll go around the table here. What is, for you, each of you, what is the most important part of a Lord of the Rings TV series? Is it the composer? Is it the director list? Is it the actual title of the show? Is it who's going to be the main star that we're going to follow? Like, what's the next piece of important information that you would like to see leaked or released so we can send our hounds and our crows a certain way? Let's just go around the table. Let's start at Nicole. What's the next piece of information you want to hear?
Damn it, I didn't want to go first.
Wait, can I guess what Nicole's going to say? Can I guess?
I want to hear what Anne wants to guess that I'm going to say. Probably something I can fight about on message boards. I'm really invested in bringing the idea that this is bringing this world to a whole new generation of people, and the opportunities to take these stories and these characters that are so valuable to us and showing that they are more universal and more archetypical and timely than we sometimes see them portrayed as, meaning that I want to see that we're going to have women directing, that we're going to have characters who are people of color, who are not just the evil characters. And that's what's important to me. And yeah, I'll stand by it.
Josh Rubenstein, I think everybody's going to ask about characters. Do you think the next thing is, character names attached to the actors that we know of?
Like, I'll be honest, like all character names, locations, story beats, all that stuff, I'm interested in learning what all of that is going to be. But the thing that I am most anticipating is how these characters are going to be as characters. Like, we're going to have to follow these characters through probably several seasons of the show. And I want, what I most want out of this show are new characters that I can identify with, and and whose journey I can enjoy. And everything else, like, I mean, yeah, I want to know what all that stuff is going to be, but if the characters themselves don't work, then none of it works, as far as I'm concerned.
Deej, what do you want to hear next?
Well, I posted this, just the link to the article a few minutes ago on my Atlanta Tolkien fans Facebook page. And the biggest thing there, everyone was like, yeah, great, but when are we going to get a cast of characters? So I would go with that, along with, when is it coming out? That would be nice to know too. When are we going to get a release date? So yeah, those two things, those are the two big things I think everyone really wants to know. And I'm hoping that this release will now be just the first of many that will start getting, and not just trickling in once every 8 months, but maybe we'll start getting monthly, updates. That would be really nice.
Yeah,
if anyone
Kathy
listening wants to send us that would be great.
Okay, well, yeah, characters, and I'm kind of dovetailing that on, because I love this idea of characters that we can follow. So obviously we've got some of the longer lived characters, and And then others, family lines, i.e. the royals of Numenor. You can follow the kingdom from rise to fall. But as a little dovetail with the fact that we keep comparing it to Star Wars, my niece and nephew only ever knew, they first experienced Anakin as a child and as a hero in Clone Wars. So I love this idea of Anatar and possibly not knowing who he is until the ring starts. Because once he tells Celebrimbor how to make a ring, you kind of know who he's going to be. Getting that character, but all the other characters around him, because I want to know who at least some of the kings are that become the 9.
Yeah.
If nothing else, the Witch King, but I would love to see how far across the map those 9 kings came from.
Yeah. Molly.
Yeah, this has actually been so eye-opening because I have this very specific corner of a fandom. So I feel like this is a slightly different crowd, and your guys' priorities are so I just would really love to hear about other things that we can do in Middle Earth. This series sounds really cool, and I'm definitely gonna watch it. But I love, to me, Lord of the Rings is so accessible to kids. Even when you don't totally understand it, it's The Hobbit is absolutely a kid's book. The Lord of the Rings books are really easily read by kids. So I would just love to hear about other Amazon projects, selfishly because I want to work on them. But even besides that, I just would love to see some more stuff that maybe is maybe a little bit more lighthearted, because this also sounds so big and so epic. And again, to me, Lord of the Rings, it's that epicness, but it's about these small scale stories and these really vulnerable character moments and really tender relationships happening in the context of the epicness. That's what I love about Lord of the Rings. And so I just want to see more of that and be assured in some way that will be in this show. But if it's not, it would just be cool to do another, let's just do some more different shows.
Before we get to Michael, I just want to expand on that Amazon acquired the full rights to Lord of the Rings, everything in the books, everything in the appendices, and obviously they've licensed more. Amazon has the rights to a scouring of the Shire. So let's see that.
It would be so good.
If it's got to be animated, I want to see an animated series. I want to see, I think this conversation was enlightening for me because a lot of you mentioned Star Wars and Mandalorian and extra creative people doing extra things over here and over there in the Star Wars fandom. In the Star Wars universe. So it's Amazon, yeah, you've got your big billion-dollar series, but you've got the license and you've got all this creative talent that is sitting at home right now, ready to get to work. And I tell you, they've all been thinking about their ideas for 6 months, 8 months in quarantine. This is the time to put some spin-off series that you have the license to, and
so
it could be
Green Dragon Cheers show. Is that what?
Oh,
we're going for?
Oh God, yes, I am here for that.
Knows your name.
Yeah, well, you've already got a Cliff at the bar, so
There you go.
It's just very British Bake Off, but it's hobbits.
Legolas and Gimli, the love story. That is what I want to see on screen.
Legolas and little baby Gimli, like the Mandalorian.
Or Legolas and Gimli and Valinor having it could be a very cute Grace and Frankie situation. I think there's a lot.
That Hot Dwarves t-shirt again.
There's so much fun to be had in the world, and I hope that the people who are now custodians of these stories understand that it's not just about the epic fantasy. It's not just about the big cool battles and the big fancy kings. It really, there's a reason why Tolkien is enduring, and it's because there's this big lore, but there are these small stories and humor and sweetness. So I just really that's what I love so much about it. So I really hope that they understand.
Yeah, the Hobbits.
Scouring of the Shire animated show. It would be so good. It would be so good. I missed it so much in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It would so good.
We were going to go to Michael. You were a main poster for the One Ring for years. So the question to you is, what should the next piece of information be released or leaked out?
So I'll answer that question, and then I'll tell you what I'm most interested in looking forward to. So I think it's time to start releasing who the main stars are going to, what they're going to play, and in giving us that information, then we can just start chewing on that and saying, you know, how we perceive this, how it's going to look. We get some Boss Logic doing some really cool renderings of what they might look like, that kind of thing. You know, that's what is always sort of gets me salivated and knowing what's going on and understanding some of these really interesting casting choices that they've decided on, to see who they're going to play and how that all falls into play, and understanding maybe this character that, you know, we've only seen be a very minor character mentioned only sporadically within the works. Suddenly they're being cast and being, you know, billed prominently as the first season main cast. It makes it very, very interesting to see what kind of levers they're going to pull in changing up these characters. For me, though, personally, what I want to see is, what I want to understand a lot more is about the writing. How these scripts are going to tell these stories, because, like we said, we have like 3,000 years of storytelling. Even if we narrow that down to like one season, is that like 100 years, 200 years, 500 years of storytelling in one season? How does that exactly work? How are these characters going to interact with each other? What I would love to do, besides going down to the sets and being part of that process, because you guys all know that's like what I love, is the movie making process itself, or the TV shows are now movies in terms of these budgets, right? It's talking to the writers and understanding what their thought process is. How are they going to tell these stories? That's what's really, really interesting for me. But you guys all had great answers too, and you know, we just want all of it. It's just like, come on.
Let's go to Anne. Let's go to Anne. What do you want to hear next from Amazon?
You know, I echo what everybody says too, but of course, then I want to start to get little glimpses of the background scenery, the cities. I'll be Nicole and the costumes, just because, you know, I would love to see all that stuff. How are they going to build that feeling that we're immersed in a story? Because I think I absolutely agree with everything everybody else says too, but you know, you want to start to see the visuals and just little pieces, like Michael said, just little pieces for us to chew on, you know, and start to speculate about. That's what I'll go back to that release with the maps. What was so brilliant about that is that they just gave us little bits of information, tiny bits. I mean, they gave us a visual, but no text. You know,
do you remember when? Do you remember when we got a photo of a shadow of a Gandalf in a hat?
Yeah.
And the shadow was it. I mean, that was it.
Exactly. So, you know, that's what I kind of would love it if they start teasing out little bits and pieces of things like that. I would love that.
Josh Long, what do you want to hear out of Amazon next?
I kind of a two-part answer for me. One, I want to see some of the visual stuff, like has been mentioned, the costumes, set designs, things like that. I want to get a sense of visually, is it going to kind of match what we saw in you know, the Lord of the Rings films? Can I get an idea if Weta worked on stuff by looking at some of the set pieces? Can I pick up on that, having talked to the Weta folk, you know, many times at Comic-Con, and the things that they went through and stuff like that, and gotten an idea. The second thing for me that would go with that too, all the pretty stuff is wonderful, and I want that, but I want to know if there's some meat on the bone. Is there substance to what we're going to get? All the pretty shiny stuff is great. If the story's not very interesting and it doesn't make you feel inspired as the films do, as the books do, I need to start knowing if I can put my faith in, is the synopsis great? Does it give me goosebumps? Yes. But can I put my faith in that? Can I, because of what Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and Middle Earth and what Tolkien has created means to me individually, the inspiration I get, the able to truck through in some ways my daily life because of things that are in those books, in those films. Am I going to be able to get that from the show too? Or am I going to be crushed because, yeah, the synopsis was great. Yeah, it's pretty, but the story left me wanting. So, sorry, that's kind of a long answer. I don't know.
Pat.
It's really easy going almost last, because basically I agree a lot with what everyone else has said, of course. But yeah, I think the ensemble cast idea that they threw out, that really intrigues me because we know, like with Game of Thrones, if anyone's read that book, there's 1,000 million characters in that book. And I think they did a really good job. Obviously, the series was very successful in weeding out probably 75% of the characters and are combining characters. And I think the challenge for these guys is going to be not only do they have to weed out some existing characters, they have to add characters that don't exist. And how many of those do you add before it's too many? But along with the characters, I'd like to kind of get a little more information on where some of this is going to be taking place. I know they said, from Lindon to the Misty Mountains to Numenor, kind of like Cliff was saying, it spans 3,000 years. Well, it also spans thousands and thousands of miles. So just to kind of get a focus on where exactly, when we get the cast, what does that mean? What is this character that I have no idea who they are? What does that mean, and what role are they going to be playing in the series?
Yeah, Jim, my question to you is, what's more important to you, the character names or what chapters has Amazon licensed from each of the books?
Yeah, well, and that kind of gets to my answer. And I'll build a little bit on what Josh was saying in terms of just the substance or the meatiness of the story. For me, it boils down to one word: fidelity. Fidelity. Is this going to be true to Tolkien versus derivative of, you pick your poison, derivative of Game of Thrones, derivative of Star Wars, even derivative of what Jackson was doing. I'm happy for them to go to new places, but the stories, and I love the idea of intimate stories. I completely agree. Tolkien has used fairy story, children's story, and fantasy story as a tapestry. The reason this resonates with us, the reason we're all buying the 4Ks and the 4K TVs and watching this thing 20 years later is because it still resonates with us. And it resonates across cultures and across countries. And why is that? Because we hear stories of hope. We hear stories of fellowship. We hear stories about mortality. So it's of heroism. All of it is resonating deeply. So I don't want some stupid little story. I want Tolkien. And that's what I'm looking for. I don't know if that boils down to an announcement. Plot lines or character arcs or those kinds of things will be great. But that will be my ultimate critique, is what can we tell about his fidelity? That's why, the whole article about, nudity in the thing blew up because we got worried about this fidelity question. What kind of a story are we trying to tell here? I want them to tell a Tolkien-esque story, please. So that's what I'm looking for.
Chris, co-founder of the website, you've been down all the leaks for 20 years. So my pointed question to you is, in your best expertise as a marketing and a website guy, what do you think is going to be leaked next?
Okay, wait, is this what I think is going to be leaked or what I want to be leaked? It's things.
Both.
Okay, well, what will be leaked next, 100%, will be the release date. That clearly is something that they're going to want to just define and put out there and get people buzzed, along with the cast names. And I think we still have a few more casts that are like big names. That's my estimation. Is there's probably like some B-list, A-list folks that might be involved in some capacity. So that's what I think is going to happen. What I want to happen, I want that trailer, that teaser trailer, the first ever trailer from The Lord of the Rings. Like I want the validation of the vision of the world, the cinematography of the world in front of my eyes. That teaser trailer for The Lord of the Rings, when that came out, I don't remember a lot in my life, honestly. I mean, I got 3 kids. I remember some of them coming into this world, but I remember that trailer release. Mike, like that trailer release with Peter Jackson talking, and then the widescreen. I know people today have no clue how big of a deal that was. Like mind-blowing situation.
Yeah,
What
we had worked on Lord of the Rings for years before that trailer came out, right? So I legit, and I'm going to admit this, I legit cried when that trailer came out.
This the one with them walking over the mountain pass.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
nine. Yeah. I was wondering if they were going to do the nine riders. If we were going to get a silhouette of 9 men.
Yeah, but all my point is the what I'd like to see next is a confirmation of the visual cinematography that's happening in this series. I think getting names and release dates is great, and we'll be able to talk about it. But for me personally, I have an art degree. I'm all about the visual. And if someone can show me 15 seconds of just how you're going to present this world and bring me into Middle Earth, I think that'll cement it for me. I'll be like, okay, I'm back in Middle Earth. And I mean, it could be as simple as the opening of the 2 towers, like flying into the freaking mountain. Like, those kind of things really get me. So that's what I would prefer.
Yeah, but that kind of thing, the opening of the 2 towers, is a once-in-a-lifetime bit of cinematic genius.
It is. Can't they do that right now? What's wrong? They
But they were both accompanied by music as well. I mean, because you had that amazing music that was attached to the 9 walking over the pass, as you met each character and the music.
Cliff, what's most important to you to get locked in now? Is it to know what chapters from the Silmarillion have been licensed? What's the most
How did you know I was
information?
thinking that? How did you know I was thinking that? All right, I'm telling you, everybody else before me was so beautifully spoken, and Molly, you're 1,000% right that there has to be that element of charm and humor and humanism, actually, that brings us into this world, right? But I'm deadly serious about this. I want them to give me an announcement, whether they licensed this book or whether they licensed the Akalabeth or the material of the Rings of Power, all that stuff. I want to know if they licensed this book or any part of this. I really want to know that, because that will allow us as the fans who are really, dyed in the wool, we're really into this stuff super deep. We'll be able to immediately, suss out on our own what people and situations are most likely to come up in this experience. And also, if it's not about visuals, if it's not about characters, it's about story. What else can you say?
So finally, my thoughts are the 2 things that I think are most important, just from what I've seen from fan reactions on the message boards, on social media and things, and the comments on Reddit, on Instagram, on everywhere. I think what's top of mind for everybody right now, for many fans, is who's the Tolkien adult in the room? Who's representing Tolkien's interests and the fidelity to Tolkien? Who's the Tolkien expert that was in the writer's room, in the story room, maybe on set? Like, it's not Tom Shippey. So who is it? I think that is the next key part of this puzzle that I think would calm a lot of nerves right now.
That's an excellent point.
I think
that's what I
anybody
think
in this chat would be willing to work for scale. Just saying.
Creatively, just personally, I want an acknowledgement that the video appendices will be continued. And I think the appendices produced by Michael Pellerin and Peter Jackson for The Lord of the Rings and Hobbit are the definitive masterclass in epic filmmaking and small stories and character. Like, the appendices are more important than any studio can imagine. And I think it would be wise to continue that legacy with, as Chris said, a behind the scenes trailer that says, hey, we've got a crazy thing going on. Look at what we're doing. And as Peter Jackson said in that trailer 20 years ago, the technology is here. This is the time. Like, I want to see appendices released online. I want to see the behind the scenes while we're making it. And I kind of want to be brought along for the journey while it's happening. And I think we're at a point now culturally, YouTube didn't exist in, 2001. And so like our consumption of media is just different. So I think Amazon would be wise to explore, appendices, wise to explore additional TV show spinoffs right now, wise to explore audiobooks of Doug Adams. You're the richest company in the world. Go pay Howard Shore whatever he needs to make an audiobook of his book with all the clips. Like, there's so much you can do with Middle Earth that is beyond that is smaller stories. And I think Cliff and Molly and everybody here is right. Everybody has a different desire and a different reason for loving these movies and these books, and an acknowledgement that one size doesn't fit all, I think, is going to be critical to the success, and especially if they want to go for 10 years or more on this with spinoffs. Guys, this has been a huge release, huge day. I thank you all for your wise opinions and incalculable interest in all this. And I'm so glad that Kalasuri and Zoanna here founded a website and have managed to keep it up on online through all these years, through the rise and fall of blogs and the rise and fall of Tumblr and the rise and fall of 18 streaming services. And here we are at the end of all things, now at the beginning of new things, and we're still breaking scoops, and this is incredible. And I'm proud to be a part of this group, and I thank you for keeping the fire alive, guys.
Thanks for doing it. I mean, you guys are, yeah, right. This is great. Good job.
Yeah.
So
great work,
that's our show for today. Weeks of speculation, verified, validated. We can confirm this is legit. This is real. The show synopsis that we've posted at theonering.net, and we've retweeted a bunch of people that took screenshots of this show. It's blowing up on social. I've seen so many reporters from Kansas City News. I see you. I saw some reporters from London already retweeting us. So I think this is going to be big news, and I'm so excited to be here on this show, breaking news like the geeks we are. This has just been amazing. This is Torn Tuesday.
Yes, indeed.
You want to take us out?
I want to tell everyone how exciting it is, really, to be at this cusp. I really feel like we're at the cusp of something much bigger than we're going to expect. And you know what? Thanks, everybody, for coming along with us again as a big worldwide fan community for another unexpected journey. We never thought we were going to get a Hobbit trilogy. We never, ever dreamed we'd get $1 billion TV series about the second age of Numenor and the Rings of Power. So there's so much to look forward to. And my hat's off to everybody behind the scenes for helping make this happen. And you're a wonderful audience. Thank you for being so faithful and coming along with us at theonering.net. Until then, we will see you next week, next Tuesday at 5 o'clock Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern. Do take good care of yourselves. Buenas noches y buena suerte.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.